Snowpiercer is the latest adaptation of the film and graphic novel that follows thousands of passengers on a 1001 car train that traverses the globe, carrying the remnants of humanity in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. You know, it's just your light entertainment. It's really light comedy. Kidding. I'm Rob Licuria, senior editor at Worldview. I'm here with Emmy nominee Alison Wright, who co-stars as Ruth Wardell. Now, Alison, Ruth is the deputy head of hospitality who looks after the spoilt one percenters at the luxury end of the train. But by episode 8, we start to learn more about her and we realise she's more unhinged, perhaps, than we thought. I would like to know what you think of Ruth.
Unhinged is fair. Yep, that's fair. When Graham Manson, our showrunner, first described her to me, I think he said insecure, highly strung, and easily rattled. So, and then he slipped sanctimonious in there as well. So I think that's a fair description of her. Yeah.
Yeah, I like sanctimonious is a really good word, and it's perfect for her. You know how each episode opens with the voiceover from a cast member revealing their perspective on and place on the Snowpiercer. As soon as episode 8 airs, you hear your voice and know, okay, we're finally getting this. We're going to get the train from her perspective, and it doesn't disappoint. What were your reactions when you got the script for episode 8 and knew that it was going to be where you get to really stretch and have a bit of fun?
So I was very excited by this episode that I did get to, stretch my legs, but that we also got to understand Ruth's point of view, because it can be really easy to think that, she's a baddie and that she's an evil character, but really she's really devoted to Mr. Wilford and devoted and eternally grateful to him. And her point of view is, he's the only reason we're all alive. There's nobody else out there that saved almost 3,000 souls. We're the lucky ones that all of our friends and family, anyone who's not on the train is gone, they've perished. And it's all thanks only to Mr. Wilford, is the way she sees it. Zealot was another word that Graham had used to describe her to me, of how she's, all about Wilford. And I think she's kind of black and white in her thinking. But we get to see her do that later with Melanie in the episode, but also to try and we sort of see her world collapse a little bit before that, and see how she realizes everyone's been lying to her. I don't think that feels good for anybody.
No, that's the thing. So like the episode starts with this voiceover and she's kind of doing her job with the cutlery and whatever, and she's very precise and she's very British, and then and I could see it, okay, this is where she's going to get her whole worldview shattered, and that's exactly what happens. And so but before we even get to that, you've touched on this, but is she obsessed with the idea of Wilfred? She idealizes him as a godlike man behind the curtain, but what's driving that deference and devotion? Is it because she's just so grateful, or is there more to it, do you think?
Well, that's a bigger question for like maybe who are the types of people that join a cult. I'm not sure about that, about how much of it has to do with the magnetism and the charisma of whoever the leader is, like Mr. Wilford in our case, or if it's also to do with a little bit of a part of a personality of the person who wants to join and follow in the first place. Something interesting about Ruth that Graham told me and came to light was that maybe her life's a bit better on the train than it was before. I think that she was like a mobile home hairdresser. That's what I think her previous life was. Yes. She experimented at the beginning of the first season with quite a few wild hairdos, and I like to think that's why. But she's fully committed to him. We don't know at this point in the story what happened to Ruth's family, or it appears that she's completely alone on the train, which means therefore completely alone in the world. And she wants to hang on to this position that she has in this new world, in this new reality. And that's all thanks to Mr. Wilford. I think she thinks he's heaven sent.
Yeah.
And she would do his bidding no matter what, which is something that we see time and time again. People that really believe in somebody and believe in their message and believe in the fact that he has himself saved humanity. That's no small, those are not small stakes,
That's right.
She a little bit too much? Maybe, yes.
Maybe, but I mean, you're playing her, so you do have to think about what was she like before to drive this obsession or devotion. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense that she probably didn't have, maybe she didn't have the most fulfilling life. And now she's in a position of some power and influence, and she's doing, good for humanity. And so that starts to become quite like seductive, doesn't it? And yeah, I think you see that towards the end of the season, which viewers haven't seen yet. She starts to really love that role of being in charge. Did you enjoy doing that? And it's a different side of her.
Well, I think I enjoy all facets of Ruth, but like whether she would be a good leader or not, I don't know. I don't know about that. You know, she's very shocked at this point in episode 8 that, you know, she's been quietly looking at all these things that Melanie has been doing since the beginning of this season, like letting Leighton out of the tail at all, like choosing him to be the detective. Like, really, couldn't we have had like Lila or somebody from First Class do that? You know, fast tracking Miles. She's been clocking all these things that Melanie's been doing and thinking, things a bit weird. But Melanie's above her and she doesn't question Melanie. You know, it's safer for her to stay in the arranged status quo. But she's been wondering all this time about all these little things that just didn't seem right. But people often turn a blind eye to things if they think the instructions are coming from someone that they admire and love and respect and that is the boss, right? And maybe that's also smart. If Ruth lost this job, what would happen to her? Where would she go?
Yeah,
exactly. It'd be a massive humiliation to step down from this. At least this position is secure and Mr. Wilford likes her and Mr. Wilford gave her the job himself personally. I think that gives her a lot of pride and she doesn't want to let him down.
Yeah. Then her worldview is shattered irreparably. I mean, it's just the fundamental thing that drives her daily. And I'm wondering, as the person inhabiting this character, were you using any other examples of how your worldview might shatter for you to really get into that headspace emotionally?
No, I don't think I necessarily needed to go anywhere outside of the given circumstances. You know, that's an ideal thing as an actor, that it's either on the page or the given circumstances are so strong that you've been able to invest in them from the get-go, and just the doing of that creates all the necessary emotions that you would have about it. And that was the be-all and end-all of the description of Ruth from the very beginning. She's Wilford's zealot, you know? And so from the very beginning, I had all of that to work with, and then now I've had 8 episodes to get there, to get to this point. So the circumstances gave it all to me, actually.
Yeah. What I also love about this show, which I spoke about at length with Graham Manson, is the characters don't neatly fit into the good guy or bad guy stereotype or archetype. There's a lot of nuance there. That's that way with Melanie, it's that way with Leighton. And I think it's that way with Ruth as well, but maybe it's a little harder to find her motivations or to kind of justify her actions. But you have to play her authentically as a person. She's not just a moustache twirler. So what were you doing to give her some authenticity and to give her that nuance?
Well, something right at the beginning that was interesting for me and was a real linchpin was in the 2nd episode when we see her go to the tail and she has to be in charge of taking an arm. We find out at some point, I'm not sure which episode, maybe the next one, maybe number 9, how many arms she's actually been involved in taking. It's quite a few, but there was something in there. There was something in a line in maybe the 1st episode, or maybe it was the 2nd, where she said something like, Melanie's telling her she's got to go to the tail to deal with something. And Ruth says something like, I was hoping to avoid the tail this week. And from that line, I thought, maybe it'd be a bit more interesting if she doesn't like doing this. We have all seen the movie. We've all seen what Minister Mason did. And as like exciting and thrilling and excellent as that was, I don't know that I could sustain that in a television series format for who knows how many seasons.
Yeah.
Just to be that purely evil, for want of a better
That's
word. You know, I
boring.
don't think I could do that in a TV show. It works for 2 hours, but not for, 102. So I thought, what if she this is something that she has to do, but she hates doing it. She doesn't want to show that weakness and fear when she goes back there, because that won't do well. And she can't say no to Melanie, because as far as she knows, Mr. Wilford's asking her to do it.
Mm.
So that right there was a bit of a split from a simpler sort of decision. That she didn't want to do that and didn't like doing that, but that was another level of a performance within hospitality. And it's all a performance for Ruth, because she's not really born for this job. She doesn't really have the right personality for it.
No.
She's far too easily triggered. She's not cool and calm and collected like Melanie. So from the beginning, I suppose, things like that didn't line up necessarily with the idea that we have about like a perfect villain.
That's a really interesting nuance that never really occurred to me, but that makes a hell of a lot of sense. And it reminds me of this, like, when you follow certain performers through their career and sometimes you're surprised at where they turn up in a project. This is not the kind of thing that I would have expected Alison Wright to be in, to be honest. But now that I've seen the whole season, I can't imagine anyone else playing her. I'm just wondering, what attracted you to this show and this role that is a little bit outside your wheelhouse to date?
Well, it was the original script that I read, was so exciting. And as everyone in the world knows, the show's been through many changes. But initially it was what was on the page, which is usually the reason. If it's what is on the page is excellent. And then there was this young unknown chick called Jennifer Connelly that I thought, maybe I'll take a chance on her. She sounds like she might be all right. But it was great. It was a great script with great characters. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. You've got Oscar winner Jennifer Connelly, Tony winner Daveed Diggs, Emmy nominee Alison Wright. I mean, it's just across the page. It's not a bad thing to be a part of. But then a lot of the cast and crew have told me that they find it really interesting that the show explores a lot of really prescient or relevant themes through the sci-fi lens. It's a really interesting allegory for, social injustice and prejudice and class and climate change and all those things. Do you enjoy contemplating issues like that through a sci-fi action adventure lens?
Well, those sorts of contemplations are not really helpful for the actor in the moment and the job that we have to do. That's more for critics or audience or to draw conclusions. And actors, we're also not responsible at all for that. That all comes down to writers that are looking in the world and then they create their stories from that. So it's always been my experience in everything that I've done, really. When I did The Americans, the whole thing came out about all those people in New Jersey that were arrested. And then that became remarkably timely. But once again, that's because the writers had picked up on that a little while before. They're just a little bit faster than the rest of us, I think, the writers. So I find that's always the case in what I do. But that's more for the audience to enjoy, of course, because the characters aren't thinking about it like that either. So to split myself between the character and like what Alison might think and judge about it, it's not helpful.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. That's not going to help your performance at all. The show is also primarily internal, physically, I mean. There's not a lot of scope for being in the great outdoors. And I'm wondering if that poses any challenges for cast and crew on the show, or is it really just, part of the day's job and not a big deal?
We have so many parts of the train spread over 3 or 4 stages in Vancouver. So it doesn't ever feel like you're stuck in that one thing and it's never changing. And Ruth, of course, gets to go to all of the different cars. She has almost free reign of the train, so she can be anywhere. And as our story moves forward, many characters, are now in different places than just that one train car. So it doesn't ever feel like you're too stuck. I mean, there have been moments where I've thought, oh my God, I'm glad my character's not in the tail, because they must be sick of being in there and just being dirty and just being in dirty rags all the time, every day, and covered in blood. Like I have gone, ooh, I dodged a bullet there. I've thought that a few times.
It's a really great costume as well, and you got your hair done, and you got the little fur thing. Like, it's nice. I mean, it can't be too hard. No, I'm kidding. You mentioned the Americans. We should probably quickly talk about that for all the nerds out there who are obsessed still with that show. I hear colleagues saying, I just discovered this new show called The Americans. I'm like, where have you been? But people love it. Why do you think the Martha character resonated with people so much? I loved her. I really felt for her so much. Like, she didn't deserve to be treated so poorly. Why? Why do we care about her so much?
I don't know. You tell me.
I don't know.
I'm too close to it. I don't know the answer.
She's so vulnerable, and she's so well-meaning, and she's being duped by this guy. And then she ends up in, like, Russia.
So, right. I know, I don't know, but it's very real what you say. It's very true. I can tell the moment that people recognize me on the street, because there becomes this look of like, you know, as if it's a little puppy with a broken leg or something. Like it's a caring, like protecting sort of instinct that they have. I don't have the answer. I'm very grateful. I'm glad it's that way, that people feel that way about her and the whole show. But it's a bit of an enigma to me. I'm not sure.
That's amazing. And then in 2017, the Americans had finally become a force at the Emmys, and you were honoured with a nomination as guest actress. Finally. I was like, yes, this is great. Take us back to that nomination. Do you remember where you were when you found out?
I think I was right here in this room. And it was it was an agent, Paul Haleppo, that texted me and said something. And I think he just said, I don't think he was my agent at the time anymore, if I remember rightly, but he was the first one I heard from, as always. And his message said, I think Emmy nominee Alison Wright. Oh my God, that just affected me there saying that. And it was like, holy shit, you know, because that's so far away from awards and stuff, are so far away from what my experience of enjoying acting and performing is. I never watched award shows. I never watched the Oscars. I never, you know, it was really cool. It was obviously still emotional for me.
Yeah. It's because so many people tell me that there's so much TV on, such good TV. It's very difficult to break through and actually get like recognized by your peers. There's a whole bunch of reasons for why that might be, but it was great to see the show and you and some of your castmates be recognized in that way. And so I'm glad that you like that. Some people are like, oh, I don't care about nominations, but that's got to be bullshit, right?
Oh yeah. Like I had one other one. I had a drama desk nom, and like I was over the moon about that too. Like over the moon. I mean, maybe when you've got like 75 of them, it becomes less of a thing. But I also like only partially believe that too. Like people who say, "Oh, I was sleeping." I don't know. I'm like, liar. You know, they're looking.
Yeah. I'm so glad. It's more. Final question is, season 2 was almost done, I think, before the shutdown forced a halt to production. So, do you still have more to do, and if not, or even if so, what can we look forward to in season 2? Because when people see the finale, they're going to be pretty dumbfounded by what we've got to come.
Yeah. I mean, is that a great like season finale or what?
So good.
So good.
So good.
It's so good. I think just the way that we end that, when people do finally see it, they'll understand what they have to look forward to for next year. I think it's a phenomenal ending to episode 10 and sets up season 2 to be so thrilling. And I do have lots more to do. And Ruth's character does expand into season 2, as you would imagine, once you know the circumstances of what is happening at the end of season 1. It gets better and better and more exciting for Ruth. Yeah.
So exciting. Well, we're really looking forward to that. Thanks so much for your time today, all your insight. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Now, everybody go to Gold Derby, make your predictions, click subscribe. We've got lots of contender chats just like this one with Alison.